Welcome very much to the CAIDX webinar series. My name is Karen Lindegaard. I work for Danish Life Science Cluster, and Danish Life Science Cluster is a partner in the CAIDX project. In CAIDX, we work with clinical AI-based diagnostics, and CAIDX is an Interreg Baltic Sea region project financed by the European Union. Today's topic is that we're going to dig into how you can find support when you are developing AI solutions for the healthcare sector. But before we start, I would like to go through a couple of house rules for the webinar. So please keep your microphone muted and turn off your camera. If you have any questions, please ask the questions in the chat. And this webinar, I just want to inform you that we will record the webinar, and after the end of the webinar, you will get a link to the recording and a link to the presentations. The slide and the videos, will be shared. So today's speakers is first we have Signe Ingholt Garde. She's a project officer at the Copenhagen Business Hub. Then we have Tariq Osman Andersen. He's associate professor at the University of Copenhagen. Simon Lemmenin Madsen, he's a senior AI specialist at the Alexandra Institute. And Signe, she will initiate with her presentation. Questions for Signe's presentation we will take in the very end of the webinar. So please keep them or place them in the chat. And then I would like to hand over the word to you, Signe. Welcome.
Thank you, Karen. I'll just share my screen and so I hope you can see my slides now, everybody. As Karen said, my name is Signe, and I work at the Erhvervshus Hovedstad or the Copenhagen Business Hub as project officer of the AI Boost of the Greater Copenhagen EDI. And I'm very happy today to just briefly introduce you to this project of what is an EDI, what is the AI Boost project, and then let some of our project partners share some of the knowledge and insights that you can get the access to through this project. So as you can see, AI Boost is also known as the Greater Copenhagen EDI. And what does the EDI stand for? It's because we are a European network of innovation hubs. The EDIs are financed by the Digital Europe program, where the EU set out to that Europe should compete with Asia and the US when it comes to advanced digital technologies. And in order for us to compete, we need the SMEs aboard. So a part of the Digital Europe program is that they are funded, I think, around 150 European hubs across Europe, with each their specialization. We have 5 EDIs in Denmark with different specialization. I've just outlined them here, and I won't dive into each specialty. But just to say that we are part of a network, so we could also connect to other specialties either in Denmark or special areas in Denmark or in the whole of Europe. So just to let you know that. Now I'll talk a bit more about what is then the project AI Boost, because our specialization is that we are focused on the artificial intelligence. So we should help SMEs through this digital transformation and innovation by helping them apply artificial intelligence. So how do we do this? Then we should do it by providing access through our partners. We provide access to knowledge, we provide access to network, testing facilities, knowledge about funding, knowledge about what should they do next, what should they prioritize, what are the right steps to take. So that's the idea of the hub, that we help the SMEs overcome some of the barriers that we know they face in terms of implementing digital technologies. by providing access to some of these resources. We have a sector focus on life science and health tech, and it's a very broad definition of life science, and it's med tech, health tech. It could even be pharma, it's smart cities, mental health. The idea is that we create some synergies with what we call the National Business Beacon, which some of you might have heard of Erhvervsfyrtårn Life Science, which is actually run by the Danish Life Science Cluster. So we are also a partner in that business beacon, and we want to curate some synergies with that we have access to some SMEs in the Erhvervsfyrtårn, or we can help SMEs in AI Boost and then guide them to the Erhvervsfyrtårn. The partners of AI Boost are both the Erhvervshus, as I mentioned, but also 3 universities, Copenhagen Business School, University of Copenhagen, and DTU. We also have 2 GTSs, Joint Research Institutes, Alexandra Institute and Force Technology. And we have the partners also from the clusters, Danish Life Science Cluster and Rebuild Denmark. So this is the hub of knowledge that we're trying to build with these partners. The idea of AI Boost is, as I mentioned, is that we help the SMEs to do this kind of prioritization. So what kind of knowledge are you lacking? What kind of access to what kind of funding would be relevant to you? Do you need to test your solution? Do you need to have access to some network? So the idea is that we help them do this prioritization by having them first in for what we call some kind of sparring AI check. Where are you in your process of working with AI, and then we design some action points for them. Concrete, what can AI Boost offer to your company? We have these 4 themes where you, as I mentioned, some sparring, some initial dialogue on what are the right priorities for them to engage in. And then we provide access to this, either the knowledge part, the test before invest, or this further network and funding. The idea of the knowledge part is that we can both offer like shorter workshops or also more advanced deep dives into meeting a researcher, having some sessions together with some researchers and then working together with these researchers. The idea of the test before invest, I would just dive a little into because that might also be relevant for some of you. I'll just have a change here. So the test before invest is basically what we call a clarifying process. Before you need to invest in a solution, could you get some guidance on what is the right data for you? What is the challenges maybe of security issues of using your data? What the challenges of algorithms? We have some possibility here to offer some guidance from experts at the Alexandra Institute, Force Technology, or Dull Living Lab. It's, as it says with the name Test Before Invest, it's a rather small test package. I've mentioned the values here at the end of the slide. But the idea is for a company to be able to take the next steps. So what makes sense in terms of potential, in terms of technical potential, in terms of investment potentials, in terms of going out to seek new business partners. So it's this clarifying process with the assistance of some experts from the Joint Research Institutes. Another very concrete offer I would mention is also that we, based on our initial dialogue with companies, we have experienced that many of them ask for knowledge and exchange of ideas and experience from like-minded companies because maybe they don't have the value gained as fast as you thought you would with using AI. So what are these barriers? How can we help them overcome the barriers? So we've formed an AI network in cooperation with the Digital Lead Cluster, where we ask companies to come into some smaller groups and exchange ideas. And then we also have some partner talks and expert talks to give them some knowledge. So this was just to give you a brief introduction of what was actually the AI Boost project about. And then, as I mentioned, now we have 2 concrete partner presentations here where you can get an idea of the kind of knowledge and services we offer in the project. And then you're very welcome both to ask questions afterwards or to contact me directly for a talk about whether it could be relevant for you. So I would like to hand over the floor to Tariq Andersen, who is associate professor at the University of Copenhagen and would share some of his insights in how design interventions can build bridge between AI solutions and the clinical practice. The floor is yours, Tariq.
Thank you very much, Signe. I just want to make sure, can you see my presentation?
Yes, fine.
Good, thank you. So, my name is Tariq and I'm associate professor at the Department of Computer Science here at the University of Copenhagen. And I'm going to talk about something we call design interventions. And I'm going to do that because I think there's a big need for figuring out ways of bridging the gap between developing AI and then getting AI adopted in clinical settings. So for some reason, we are doing a little bit the same as we did in the 80s, where we forgot about the end user and the needs and the real life contexts. And if you look at projects today with AI in healthcare, then it's not that often that you will see designers or human AI interaction specialists. So they are kind of missing from the projects. So I'm just going to motivate a little bit the problem that I'm going to talk about solutions for. If you do a search on PubMed or the National Library of Medicine, and you want papers with AI in the title, then in the period of the past, let's say 6 years, you'll have around 6,000 results. So this suggests a lot of publications demonstrating the potential and the kind of hype of AI or modern machine learning. If you then look into how many of these systems, machine-based systems, are actually approved for, regulatory approved for deployment in the US and in Europe, then you will only find, at least a few years back, around 300 systems. So there's some discrepancy between the number of studies and potential, and then how many are actually deployed. So I'm just going to show you this one example. So this is a paper in a very famous journal called JAMA, and this paper has, I think last time I checked, around 5,000 to 6,000 citations, and it's a paper that demonstrates the potential with predicting blindness among diabetes patients using images taken in the clinic. And this, when it came out, presented the potential with visual analytics and modern machine learning. But then when it was rolled out in 11 clinics in Thailand in a prospective study, then it kind of failed because of socio-technical issues. So for example, only 50% of the patients, or 50% of the patients opted out because the nurses didn't find it appropriate for the particular patient, or only 20% of the images were actually possible to grade using the machine learning algorithm due to poor images. So this has been called the last mile problem by Enrico Coera. And basically what he describes in his viewpoint here is that we might be quite good at the moment to go the first mile, so to do the data capturing and do the middle mile, the model building and so on, but actually getting those systems to work in the real world, in the clinical setting, and getting into routine use is very difficult. And then you might ask, why is it so difficult to go the last mile of medical AI? And I'm going to give you a few examples of why it's difficult, and also maybe how you could start working with bridging this kind of gap there is between the first miles and the last mile. So this first example is some work that we did with electrophysiologists, they're called. So these are specialized cardiologists that look at data coming in from pacemaker patients through remote monitoring. And this work went all the way to the Danish news, and also suggests some of the hype that is on this area. And a little bit similar to Google, we had a very large data set, around 20,000 patients were part of this study, and so it's data coming from the pacemakers, and we were able to predict something called electrical storm. So you could think of this as a severe form of cardiac arrest among these patients. So in the lab, it worked quite well, but we wanted to explore how this would, land when we introduce it to clinicians in real life settings. So what we did was we changed a little bit the model that we were working on to be a little bit with fewer false positives, so to speak. So what you see here, it's not very important that you get the details, but it's just to suggest that we basically printed out the output of the AI on paper. So we wanted to tell the electrophysiologist whether the alarm was raised or not, and the chance of getting these arrhythmias within 30 days. And then we used explainable AI to highlight some of the features or data points that were important or not important. So we then convinced 7 of these very busy electrophysiologists to go through 5 patient cases on paper, so mimicking a real life setup. And then we questioned, is the AI useful? Does it support decision making? And does it speed up time for decision, and so on? So the story here is just to remind you that you quite early on can bring something out to clinicians and get quite valuable feedback. And I brought a quote with me to point towards something that's particularly important, and one of the reasons for why it's difficult to make AI useful in a clinical setting. So I'm just going to read aloud. The AI alarms prediction is something that might make me react a little bit more aggressively. But if our patient schedule is fully booked both today and tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, but on Friday we have time, then I kind of have to make a trade-off if I really want to spare him a shock. So you can read many things into this, but what is particular here that I would like to highlight is that you might have an AI alarm that can predict something, and but on the other hand, you have a local context, such as, can we bring the patient in to have a look at? And that suggests that making AI useful is dependent very much on the local clinical context, which is often overlooked. So I've put this in kind of bold text. How can we make AI clinically useful? Well, it depends very much on the local clinical context. So in other words, we really need to listen to what's going on in the different contexts that we want to embed or deploy the AI system. And as I motivated or started the talk with, then we rarely, or we often forget that the designers and the anthropologists who go out and discuss with the end users the potential that they could bring to the table. So I'd just like to highlight some inspiration of design interventions of where I want to go. So this is a book on design anthropology, where they suggest, combining design and workplace studies. So simply going out there and talk to the clinicians early on is kind of useful. This is a very old paper, it looks like, but very influential people that started the human-computer interaction research field. So this is a paper from 1996, and as you can see at the bottom, they proposed something called design interventions. And this is also what I will do next. So I'll just give you a little bit of a glimpse into what a design intervention is and how that can be used to make AI clinically useful. So in this image, you can see on the left a large specialized hospital in Kenya. And then the second picture is a large specialized hospital in Denmark. And then there are some images from other types of clinics that have radiologists employed. And what I would like to highlight with this is that we did a prototyping and design interventions in different contexts to explore how we can make it useful in those contexts. So if you have one AI model, you might want to ensure that it works across a different context. And as I said, so we did design interventions in Kenya. This is an image from a small hospital in Kenya where we're in the radiologist office, and we discussed with him how he would perceive an AI system that could detect findings on an X-ray. So this is kind of a mock-up. He cannot interact with it. So this was very early on in the project. Later on in the project, we had a working prototype that we could bring into the clinical setting. So this is in a large hospital in Copenhagen in Denmark, a specialized hospital, I should say. So here in this design intervention, we have the radiologist and the UX UI designer. And then usually we also bring the machine learning engineer or the data scientist to be able to discuss also with the end user. And then myself, the human computer interaction researcher. And what we do here is three things. First, we try to understand today's work. So we discuss the current work and the workflow. And then we move along and explore the clinical usefulness of the working prototype that we've built over several iterations. But then we also have alternatives to present and discuss if that's an option. So what is really happening here is that we're trying to bridge between his current way of working, in this case, radiologist as a specialized hospital, and then how this AI platform that we're developing can become useful for him in his everyday work. And what we found here was that there are some dependencies that you need to figure out. You need to figure out how the functionality, the threshold of the AI and what AI explainability you want to use, for example, as technical dimensions. And then you also want to ensure that they work for the particular clinic, the type of clinic, the expertise level of the users, the patient context and the user situation. And I'm just going to show you one example here. Similar a little bit as the other one, since it's also about a Friday. So this is a radiologist saying that Fridays would tend to be more active because if you have a long list on Friday, the turnaround time will be way longer. There's very low coverage over the weekend, so there are few on-call doctors or radiologists. And then on Monday, it tends to be very busy. So if you can see, I've highlighted the connection between, or the dependencies between the threshold of the AI, so where you want to set the threshold as in when it detects something as a finding on the X-ray or not, and then the user situation, in this case, Friday. This means that the same AI model can become more useful if you can interact with it or configure it, if you can configure the threshold. And I'm just going to show you this, how it looks in our prototype. So this is the possibility to configure the threshold of the AI. So on a Friday, you might have, set that that it's you only want to detect the finding and have high precision. On the other hand, if you want to leave the office, you might slightly lower it so you catch more to be able to see that you don't miss something if you leave a list of X-rays. So this is just an example of how we use design interventions to find out how we can configure the system so that it fits with the local practices. In this case, the AI decision threshold. And my last slide. So another way of thinking about design interventions is that you have before use on the left side, where you can work with mock-ups and workshops. And then often projects, they want to go to the clinical trial to show that it really works, like the Google example. But there's a lot of opportunity in between that we rarely use, and this is what I would advocate for. So simply to making prototypes and mock-ups very close to the everyday work to discuss how we can make this useful or not. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Tariq. I think there are no questions so far, so we'll just pass on the word to Simon.
All right. I will just share my slides. Are they visible now? I can't see you. Are they visible?
Yeah,
I see nothing. Perfect. All right. I'll be talking a little bit about the Alexander Institute and how we work with development of AI solution within the healthcare sector. And I actually think there's a really good connection to the presentation that Tariq just gave, because including design interventions is, or at least including the user needs, is something that we have a high focus on here at Alexander. I'll just give a really brief introduction to the Alexander Institute, but because I don't know how many knows about who we are. The Alexander Institute is one of Denmark's 7 research and technology organizations that is sort of the bridge between the university and the private commercial companies out there in Denmark. So we are sort of bridging the gap between those. So we are doing a lot of applied research so that the newest technology that is being developed at the university becomes available to the private companies so that they can adopt those technologies into their products. We are the only RTO that has a specialized focus at IT and digitalization in Denmark. So the focus of us is also to take the newest IT research and sort of disseminate that technological knowledge so it becomes available to the Danish society. We are a non-profit organization in the sense that we are owned by the Aarhus University Research Foundation. That means that all the revenue that we produce is going to the foundation that is being, and then again being reinvested into the Alexander Institute. So it's sort of the guarantee that we can participate as a partner and an impartial partner in any kind of research project or research activity and solution development, because we don't have any private actors that are up for gaining a profit from us. We are approximately 100 experts that is distributed across 4 different research and development labs that is physically located both in Aarhus and in Copenhagen. So you should be able to reach out to us. When we talk about the focus area that is health and AI, we primarily have 2 focus areas. The first one is preclinical research and development, where we are developing a lot of support tools for visualizations of big 3D structures and other things in order to boost the production of medication. But we also have a big focus on developing solutions for the clinical practice, and especially also for analyzing patient data in general. So not only things that is being collected at the hospital, but also data that can be collected at home by the patient. So what we are primarily working with is sort of developing decision support tools that can be used for either treatment and diagnosis of patients in the hospital, but also for AI tools that can be of assistance, for example, in rehabilitation after the patient has come back home. The AI solution development pipeline at the Alexander Institute is divided into four different parts that is owned by the different labs here at Alexandra. And the first one is actually in this pipeline. The first step is the understanding of the user needs. We take a lot of pride in actually going out and investigating what solution is actually needed in order to solve the end user need, so that we develop the correct solution from the get-go and not just develop a solution for the solution's sake. And that has actually, we have a high experience that by doing this, we also get a very high adoption rate of the technologies that we are developing in general. The second step that we have in the pipeline is the data collection and analysis. Of course, we can help out with enabling tools for making the data collection itself, but also in order to just make an initial assessment of the data that is being collected, if there's actually any signal, so to speak, in that kind of data before we go on into the actual model development itself, where the model development is about choosing the correct machine learning model and then training and testing of that. But in the end, we also have sort of support. We also have support for what's called the last mile. That is we have two entire labs that are working with the test and deployment of these kind of models, so that they're actually getting integrated into the systems that is currently being employed in the healthcare sector. So we are covering all the way of the development phase, all the way from the start with understanding the user needs and all the way to the deployment itself. What can we then contribute with in this sort of setting when it comes to the healthcare sector? Well, we have many years of experience with working with different actors in the healthcare sector, that being primarily researchers, doctors, life scientists, hospitals, etc. But we also have some experience with working with different private companies in this respect. And we also have a big understanding of what is actually needed in the different organizational organizations in Denmark, the municipalities, regions, and etc. Besides that, we also have some expertise in different kind of data modalities. We have worked a lot with bioelectrical signals, but we also do have a lot of experience within bioimaging and image analysis in general. So that is sort of the two strength areas where we can contribute with developing AI in a healthcare context. We have also gained a lot of experience with natural language processing and employing large language models. But they are currently mostly at a general purpose state, but they can easily be sort of tweaked to fit into a healthcare setting. And then we also, another thing is that we have also worked a lot with person-sensitive data in regards to developing AI in the healthcare sector. Just as Tarek mentioned, we and I also mentioned before, was that we take a lot of pride in gaining user insights before we actually develop a solution, because from our experience, it helps ensure that the technology that we develop will actually be used in the end. So it's our goal that we don't develop something just for developing the solution. We really want the technology to come out and be of use in the clinical work life or in the current workflow that we are deploying it to. And saying that, we of course had both experience also in the deployment and integration part, and then the cybersecurity part of this. Some of the challenges that we currently see or meet a lot when we are out working with the different healthcare actors and talking to companies is that there is a need to work with many different kinds of data modalities. So we have a lot of experience with images and structural data and time series data, but it's just, although we can contribute, it's still only a drop in the water to solve all the issues that are out there in the healthcare sector. Also due to the fact that data availability is often an issue, especially for the private companies to get access to this kind of data. Another issue that we often encounter is sort of the regulatory issues, because there are a lot of issues. There has been a lot of issues with different interpretations of GDPR, because in Denmark there isn't any national interpretation of the GDPR legislation. So it's always challenging to deploy a product because in the Danish context, because you have to get a GDPR certification basically in every municipality and each region in Denmark. And then there's of course some new regulations on the way in form of the AI Act and the MDR certifications as well. And then in general, it's also just difficult to integrate with the different platforms that are currently at the hospitals, because the big tech providers for the hospitals usually have a very closed ecosystem, and it can sometimes be difficult to integrate into those. But enough talk about what we can do. I have taken in a little example of an actual product that we have been conducting, so that you get a little bit more context on how it is that we work. This was a project in collaboration with Aalborg University Hospital, and it was a project about classification of hearing loss, because currently the need that we wanted, or the issue that we wanted to solve, was that the diagnosis of non-dangerous hearing loss is very time-consuming and resource-consuming. So would it be possible to have an AI system that could assist in this process, so that we didn't need to use that many resources, or as many resources on it? So we tried to develop a model that could classify into 3 categories of hearing loss. That was no hearing loss, non-dangerous hearing loss, and dangerous hearing loss, based on a very simple subset of data that is listed here in the middle. It's in Danish though, so it's the first data source was a questionnaire. The second was a hearing screening, and the third was a pressure measurement within the ear, and then the last part was an image of the eardrum, maybe. Actually, I don't have the English word for it. And based on these different data sources, we developed a collection of AI models that were actually able to score whether or not a patient were in one of the 3 categories of a hearing loss. Besides that, we also gave both we gained and the clinicians gained a lot of insights into the data collection process, because all these data were collected from different sources. So there was a lot of integrational problems with regards to actually getting them into a structured format where we could analyze them all in a single framework. And in the end, it actually meant we ended up with a mock-up solution for app that could be used for testing the setup in a clinical setting. This is basically just a web application where you could enter these different data modalities, and then it could give you a scoring on which category you were in. So that was all for me. And if you have any questions as well, you're welcome now, or you can reach out afterwards on this contact information.
Thank you, Simon. Perhaps you could stop sharing your screen. Thank you. There's still no questions, but I do have a question. I have several, actually. I would like to ask you, Signe. I know that the AI Boost program is like an international program. Could you tell me a bit more about how could international companies access the AI Boost and because you had a lot of references to Danish companies and how you work with Danish companies, but how could international companies benefit from the AI Boost?
Yeah, it's because we've only been working for half a year, so we only so far have actually Danish companies in the hub. I think we are able to help international companies as well. I think it's just a matter of contacting us actually, because it is an EU program, so we should take in all European companies. And I mean, there will be two ways. I mean, you can either contact us directly, or we could also envision having some cooperation with other digital hubs. So if you are already cooperating with your local European digital hub, then you could be transferred through a hub and then to cooperate with us. So there are two ways in, but we haven't any concrete experience yet. So it's just about contacting me and we'll see how it works in practice.
That sounds great. And I also have a question for you, Simon. I got a bit curious about this thing you said that the interpretation, for example, of the GDPR varies from each municipality in Denmark and between the 5 regions. Do you have any idea if that is the same throughout Europe? So it's not only at a country level, but it's actually at a, can you say, a sub-unit level that you have such a variation?
I can't say for sure on a EU basis, because it's up to the individual member states to if they want to make a national interpretation or not. So I really can't say. We have only covered the Danish experiences in that regard.
Okay. That was my curiosities that I had. I thought that you had great presentations, and there's still nothing in the chat. So I think it's time to wrap up now. Thank you very much to the 3 of you for your presentations today. And I would like to say on behalf of the CAIDX team that we now are having a break until the autumn, where we're going to take up the webinar series again. And if there are any topics and speakers that you would like to see in the webinar series, please do not hesitate contacting me. Then I'll look into that. Otherwise, stay well until we meet in the autumn. Bye-bye.